Well, hello and welcome. Thank you so much, Maria, for joining us. We are really excited to talk to you about your career, your background and experience, and advice that you would share with our girls in our Girls Inc. and Girls in Youth programs at YWCA Minneapolis. I would love to start with just doing a brief introduction. So if you could share with us your name, your pronouns, and a fun fact about yourself that we might not know. We would love to get to know you a little better.
Great. So my pronouns are she, her, and hers. My name is Maria Regan Gonzalez. And a fun fact, I grew up playing ice hockey, and I started playing ice hockey when I was 10 years old with the boys, and I played for many years until college. And most people don't think, a lot of girls now they play hockey, but back then they didn't. There was no girls playing hockey, and especially no Mexican girls playing hockey. So definitely Midwestern Latina all the way.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. So you are currently the mayor of Richfield. We would love to hear a little bit more about your current political role, what you do, and who you represent.
Yeah, so yep, that's correct. I'm the mayor of Richfield. My city's about 36,000 people, though I do think we are undercounted. And traditionally, people think of Richfield as maybe older, white community members, and that is a part of our population, but actually it is an extremely diverse city. Our average age is 34. We have a lot of young folks as well. And 72% of the students in our school district are students of color, with 40% of all of our students being Latino students. So we are an extremely diverse city. We're an extremely diverse community. And my role as mayor is to be public policy maker. So we set the budgets, the vision, the priorities for the city for the next few years, but also into the next 30, 40, 50 years, because the projects that we do and focus on today will still be around in the next 20, 30, 40 years. So we are always thinking about the long-term prosperity and future of our city and community. And then another role, I have two other roles. Well, actually, I think as mayor, you kind of do it all. You do all different things. But I also get to be Richfield's #1 cheerleader, the biggest cheerleader for our city. I get to lift up amazing leaders, great initiatives, inspiring people, things going on in our community. And so I really am proud to be always encouraging and lifting up the awesome leadership in our city. And I also get to be, as I call it, Richfield's human piñata. So that means that when people are angry, guess who the first person is that they talk to? Me. And when things go wrong or when there's a crisis situation, I am also one of the very first people who receive and know that information. But also I am a lot of times the public face and representative for our city in difficult times, like now during COVID or other times.
Wow, what a huge role. So many more aspects to it than I even really ever imagined. And as you spoke to, this is, of course, such a difficult and a different time than all of us expected. One of the things we've been asking all of the amazing women leaders we've been talking to in the last weeks since we've gone virtual is, how are you strong, smart, or bold in your life right now?
So I think I've been learning, to be strong, smart, and bold. And that means different things at different times in our life, and in different situations. And so a lot of times being strong, smart, and bold, you're the one that gets everything done. And I'm definitely one of those people. But in a crisis situation, you really have to be strong, smart, and bold as a leader and say, you know what, right now, my role as mayor is to support all of the amazing leadership in our whole community and our city. I cannot take everything on. And honestly, I was trying to at first. I was checking in with all of our businesses, all of our partners, all the residents I knew. How are you doing? Do you have what you need? And while that connection is important, we have people in our city government, we have people in our schools, we have people in organizations, and what they actually need is for you to encourage them, is for you to support them, for them to step into their leadership, and for them to know that you have their back and you're there for them. And that a lot of times in times of crisis, people look to their leaders for hope and inspiration, not to just have the super long list of stuff and I'm going to check off 50 things today and that's what leadership looks like. Sometimes that's what leadership looks like, but sometimes bold leadership is just supporting the leadership of others and being that light and inspiration and hope when people are struggling to find that. And so I have really had to step back and say, you know what, right now being bold looks like being encouraging and supportive to all the people in my community.
What is it like to be specifically a female leader in your community, and how have you embraced and taken on that role in your time as mayor?
So unfortunately, like in a lot of leadership positions, but in an executive position like mayor, there's not a lot of women. There's not a lot of young women, and there's not a lot of women of color. So sometimes I call that the triple threat that I have, but it's also an opportunity. And so I think sometimes it can be difficult because people, one, I don't fit their physical profile of what they think a mayor to be. They say I'm too young, or, you know, I've had people ask me if I'm only going to serve Latino people, which I don't know that they've ever asked an older white man if they only serve older white men. But you know, I might not fit into somebody's box, and I'm used to that. And I have I've made the decision in my leadership in my life that I am always going to stay true to myself. And even though that sometimes can be the harder thing to do, I can never go wrong, and I will always learn and grow. And if I do that, and so as mayor, I do the same thing. People might want me to act or dress a certain way, and I really focus a lot of time and energy on what does leadership look like for me, Maria, and how do I share that and communicate that with community. And my leadership is collective, and I lead with others, lifting up the partnership and leadership of others. My leadership is compassionate and empathetic. I really want to hear how people feel and what they think, because one of the most important things that I know, that one of the most important things we can do as leaders is help people feel seen and heard, like they matter. So many things in our world have made people think that they don't matter and that they're not good enough. And my job is to show them that, yes, you do matter and you are good enough. And so that is to lead with compassion and empathy. And in some ways, I'm a pretty casual person as well. And I love bright colors and bright things. So I might wear, una blusa bordada, Mexican embroidered shirt like this, with a very cute professional jacket over it. And so I really try to stay authentic to who I am as a leader.
I think that's so important what you just said, and something that I hope that the girls in our program are hearing from you, that leadership can look so many different ways, and part of stepping into that role like you did is to make that leadership role yours and still be yourself and maintain yourself through that. Could you tell us a little bit more about your career path and your history and how you got to the place that you're at right now?
Yeah, so I love talking to girls because, to be honest, my leadership started when I was a kid, and it's because of the way that I acted and the opportunities I had as a kid that I am a leader today. And so my leadership really comes from my mom, and my mom is an immigrant from Mexico, one of 10 children, and she came out of extreme poverty, and unfortunately my family still lives in extreme poverty in the neighborhood that's controlled by some gangs and narcotraficantes in Mexico. And so that is half of my family. And then I grew up here in the Midwest, and they said, listen, you guys are very privileged. Your cousins don't necessarily know when they're going to get the next meal. You know, they have a couple pairs of shoes each year. And your job as a privileged child and a privileged family is to do everything you can to use that privilege to better your community in the situation for your family. So instead of getting Christmas presents, we would be going to actually the YWCA in our local community, which is also a shelter for victims of sexual and domestic abuse. And we would bring the kids toys, we would bring food and clothes, and translate for the moms and do all kinds of things. And so my mom volunteered at our local YWCA for 11 years before they finally hired her as a coordinator there. And we grew up our whole life walking from school to the shelter. We clean the shelter storage room, we take care of the kids. Our whole life was committed to service as a family, and we were taught that it was an obligation and a duty to serve our community. So of course I did that in high school, and I did it all through college, and I went to school. I was the first in my family to go to college, and I got my degree in public policy and global studies. And I wanted to be a scientist, environmentalist, but apparently I don't have a science brain, and I failed all my science classes in college. And so I said, okay, I can keep going. I just got to try something new. And essentially I worked in community for years. I worked in government. I worked in nonprofit. I explored all kinds of things. And I moved to Richfield with my husband. We bought our first home, and we said, this is where we want to grow our family. It's such a diverse, beautiful community. But I also ended up working for the city, and I said, wow, this city government is not reflective and inclusive of who this community is. And that's a disservice to everybody. And I didn't know anything about running for office. You know, I had voted every single time. I had donated to candidates, but that was it. And I said, you know, I think I have something to offer. I think I have a perspective in community and health and racial justice organizing that the city could benefit from. And I guess I'm just going to run for office. And I never had knocked on a door. I had never been on a campaign. And a lot of people told me I could never do it, and that there was somebody that was next in line that was prepared for years to be in that position. But when you are true to yourself, and you are not afraid to face your fears, and you face your fears anyways, really amazing things happen. And we kicked butt. We did a really good job. We got 58% of the vote when everybody told us we couldn't do it. And I just encourage girls, like I would not be where I am today if I did not have that belief of being true to who I am in spite of anything that anybody tells me. And I thank my mentors that have always been strong women who have been there for me to help me along the way. So I just think it's the way that I grew up as a kid, and my commitment to community that I've always had, and the amazing role models and women mentors that I've had too.
Where do you see yourself, or where do you hope to be in the future, maybe 5 years from now?
You know, a lot of people ask me that, and I just, to be honest, like I seriously don't know. And I really like being mayor. I've been mayor for only a year and a half. And the thing that I love about it, there's a lot of things, but one of the things that I love about it is that I get to focus 100% on what's best for my community and figure that out with my neighbors. And there's no political party involved. I'm a nonpartisan candidate. And I really appreciate that. And I think that mayors across the country, you can see it, are doing amazing things, as are governors. And I actually think that local office and in local government is where it's at. So I don't know that I'm really interested in other positions in politics. I have a really rewarding job at Blue Cross where I'm impacting and addressing the social factors that impact our health and making sure we do better at addressing those as a business. So I actually think about, a couple priorities that I really want to keep working on, like affordable housing and racial equity, and moving great work in those areas and leading. But I also want to start a family. I don't have any kids yet, and I'm interested in growing a family. And I think my mom sacrificed herself so that her children could have the future, a prosperous future. And she did that so that I don't have to sacrifice myself and everything I have as a mom and as a woman to give my children a good life. And so I would like to have a family. And I also want to be true to who I am. And I think that my mom fought very hard, and the women, you know, who are from that generation did give up everything. They gave up themselves for their kids. And it's my responsibility to be who I am and to never take that for granted, because generations before us did not have that privilege. And I want to have kids, and I want to be able to be myself, if that means having a job and being mayor, or just being mayor, or whatever, and still keeping my passions and raising a family. I want to do that. And I want to be who I am today as a leader, so that the young girls that are going to be watching this know that they can be whatever they want to be, whoever they want, and they don't have to change one thing about themselves to do that, because I have already been able to achieve that. And so they don't have to worry about making those sacrifices, because I have myself and other amazing leaders have already done that. And we've proven you don't have to sacrifice who you are to be a leader.
Well, you kind of just answered my next question, which I will still ask anyways, because I'm sure that you have some more incredible things to share. But what would be one piece of advice that you would share with young people?
I think I've said this one a lot, but I just want to reiterate it, because it's honestly like the most important thing, is that you need to be true to who you are, and you will never, ever go wrong, ever. But in order to know who you are, you have to take the time to get to know yourself. So, you know, maybe that's exploring your creativity. Maybe that's talking to your mom and your aunties and your grandma about your family history. Maybe that is building really strong relationships with other awesome girls and figuring out what helps me feel good and what helps me feel validated, and recognizing things that help you feel strong and good, and recognizing things that maybe that make you feel afraid or not so good, and building awareness, self-awareness. And so I think that's the number one most important foundation. And to never be afraid to ask for help. I think our culture and society is very focused on individualism and being unique and all of that, which is great. But at the end of the day, and COVID-19 is showing us that we are nothing without our relationships. And so having strong relationships with family, with friends, with mentors, with coaches, with counselors is so important to being a strong, healthy, amazing woman and girl. So those are some of the most important things.
Thank you for that. So much of everything that you've said resonates with my own experience, and I think for sure with the experience of the young women in our programming too.
Great. Really, this is a really tough thing for a lot of people, but I think as a kid, you don't get to choose what experiences you face a lot of times. You don't get to choose your family. You don't get to choose the school you go to, or the housing you have, or the situations that you're in. And unfortunately, you have to experience things that can be super difficult, and you have no choice but to experience that. And so I think encouraging girls always to do whatever they can to find things that can help them get through difficult times, including relationships, is super important. And that when you grow up and you're older, you know, you may have had to experience some pretty difficult things as a kid, but as an adult, you don't have to experience those things anymore. And you have the power to change and transform and control your life. And that when you were a kid, you didn't have that power, and that you're going to be okay, that you have everything you need, that you're strong, that you're powerful. that you have all the wisdom and everything inside of you already, and that you can heal and you can grow, and be an amazing person, and that those things that happened to you as a kid, you know, while they were traumatic, they could be life lessons and learnings if you're able to heal yourself. And I see a lot of women and men who unfortunately, you know, maybe might not recognize those things, and they continue to perpetuate those same patterns over and over and over again that they unfortunately experienced as a kid. And they don't have to do that. They can live a better life. They can be happier. They can achieve all the things that they want in life. But it takes healing and self-love and self-acceptance, which again is the most important thing. So here's another reason why it's important. But I do see that we are our own worst enemies sometimes. And I just, you know, as a kid would tell myself, you're going to be okay, you're strong, and, you know, as an adult, you're going to be an amazing, awesome leader, and that you're, you know, you might not have to live through these difficult things anymore. And so to just remind kids of that too. I'll share this kind of the answer for people, for all folks, not just in my city, because they can do the same thing in their own communities. But I work a lot with the schools, and I'm constantly calling the principals of our schools and saying, hey, do you have career day? Can I come and read? Do you have a government class? Is there anything I can do to come and speak to your students? And how can I help connect them to other adults and leaders that look like them? Because like I said, the majority of our students are students of color. And so I do most of my work through the schools. I'm sure there's a lot of other ways that I could get engaged, but to be honest, it's mostly through the schools. And I actually, a lot of kids reach out to me. So I think a lot of the teachers kind of have assignments where they will have them write to me on a certain policy issue or topic. So I get a lot of either handwritten letters or emails, and I make sure to answer every single one of them. And I do visits to classrooms on certain issues. And in terms of getting involved, I think they can start with talking to their teacher. They can call a city council member. They can ask their parent, and just, what do you care about? What is one topic that you care about? Let a caring adult know that you're interested in that topic. And honestly, when I talk to youth, they bring up, especially fifth grade and older, they bring up the best ideas of things that we should be doing in our city that maybe we haven't recognized or we haven't thought of ourselves. And it's been awesome because we have implemented some of that. And every single time we have a big policy change, for example, increasing the age to 21 for tobacco usage, or affordable housing policies, or things around police, we have asked our youth and our youth partners and organizations if they want to be a part of that work, and what do they think about those policies, and how might we share this with our kids. And they have awesome ideas. And I would say it's just an area that I always want to do more of because it's so important. I think we need to do more, period, in connecting with youth, and the youth have some of the best ideas out there too.
Are there any ideas that they've shared with you that come to mind, something that young people in your community have suggested?
Yes, there was, this is a really small idea, but it was awesome. And I get a lot of complaints about it actually. But in our parks, when the spring comes, there's a lot of dog poop around the parks. And there was 2 kids that contacted me and said that they would work with their Eagle Scout team to make little doggy bag boxes for every single park in the city to help our residents. If they didn't bring a bag, they could have one in all of our parks. And people loved that idea. They got really engaged. They got really excited. We had kids also turn their little free libraries into little free food shelves during the time of COVID. even the work that the kids have done to say thank you to our first responders and really lead the way in making those thank yous and sending them to our first responders has been really meaningful.
Wow, those are such special and ideas that I love the way that they've impacted their community and in a really visible way, I'm sure too, as they're walking around their neighborhood and they see these things.
For sure.
Any other questions folks have?
I think there's just one thing that I want to say that I forgot to say. I kind of said it, but I just want to be really clear. So something else I want to tell the girls is people will always tell you, unfortunately, you'll have times when people say, maybe you're not good enough to wait, oh, maybe you're not a good fit, maybe now is not the right time. You're going to have people telling you no. You're going to have people telling you you're not good enough in different ways, even if it's opening up a magazine and looking at an ad. And I just think the more that girls and boys and everybody can understand you're going to have barriers, that's just a part of life. Is it fair? Absolutely not. Should it happen? Absolutely not. But it does happen. And I see that there's a big difference between the people who know that they can still do what they want in spite of that, and the people who actually believe what somebody says like that to be true. And so I just encourage our youth to please know that unfortunately, you know, you may experience somebody telling you you're not good enough in different ways. You might feel that way, but that doesn't mean it's true. And that it's really an important skill to have to be able to grow and be strong and do what you want to do in spite of people telling you no, in spite of people telling you you're not good enough, in spite of people trying to put barriers in front of your way.
We hope to be able to see you again in the future.
I know. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.